So I want to talk about the entirety of the Penguin HBO Max show. I have done individual reviews on every episode as it was coming out. This is going to be more so of a look back on all 8 episodes and kind of give you the rundown on whether I think you should watch it. So, I've seen people compare this show to Sopranos, and while I've only seen a couple of episodes of Sopranos, I feel like Sopranos is a very sort of I guess satirical look at the mob life. I know that there's serious stuff that comes later, but the show is genuinely funny. And I appreciate that. It's a kind of a dark comedy, sort of like Breaking Bad was. You know, there's obviously going to be serious moments, but there's enough sort of like a pseudo world and charisma from James Gandolfini and of course Bryan Cranston that makes the show just fun. And Breaking Bad is another show that I need to finish because I never finished that show either. The Penguin is very serious, but what they have in common is that the Penguin really does character arcs and backstories really well. The way the show is structured is episode 1, well, first of all, it takes place shortly after the events of The Batman from 2022, the Matt Reeves film. The show sort of starts following the Penguin and the events of the film with the Riddler and with Carmine Falcone, and then they introduce characters related to Carmine Falcone, namely Sophia. So what happens is in the first episode, a lot of stuff kind of goes down. Oz meets Victor, Sophia's introduced, and then things slow down a bit. And I have seen some people say the show is slow. It only really gets slow in the first sort of half after the first episode, but that's because what they're doing is they're building up the backstories of the characters so that you understand their motivations. We find out about what happened to Victor as a result of the Riddler and what he did in the film. We find out Carmine Falcone's daughter Sophia and the struggle she went through. And that was a very surprising backstory for me because in many ways, she didn't become a hardened criminal just because she was born a psycho. That's not like the Joker was kind of like that. That's not Sophia. Sophia, her father, Carmine Falcone, really did a number on her emotionally and sort of made her jaded. We also find out a bit more backstory about Oz around episode 9. And, the show really does a great job of throwing character subversions at you without you expecting it. Like, for example, there's multiple times in the show where you feel empathy and sympathy for Oz and Sophia. You feel like they were kind of caught up in something that they in a life that they didn't really want, but they are trying to make the best of it. But then you see them do something that's just incredibly messed up that can only be done by somebody who maybe isn't a narcissist, but is certainly not emotionally empathetic to others. Then you start to lose your sympathy for the character. I really believed that by the end of this show, one of the problems is that we were going to actually end up liking the Penguin. And so when the time comes for Batman to face him again in the next film, that we sort of feel a bit conflicted. But no, by the end of the show, you really see that the Penguin, and it's built up. It's not like it just happens. It's just they tease you in one direction, then they bait and switch you and go the other direction, except that it makes sense. The Penguin does things in the last couple of episodes that show that he's a very narcissistic and manipulative person. And I love how the Penguin is manipulating the characters, the cops, the criminals, Victor, with lots of tactics, gaslighting, playing the victim, straight up lying. And what's happening simultaneously is the Penguin show, in a very metaphorical way, is kind of playing with your emotions. And I really appreciated that about the show. Like I mentioned, Penguin does some really unforgettable things near the end of the series, and it just sort of made me say, okay, this guy cannot be a good guy. Like, this is not what good people do. Oz does not care about his own family. He doesn't care about any kind of loyalty. I mean, he cares about loyalty if it benefits him, but he's not loyal to people who have done things for him. And Sophia is also just caught up, but I do think that Sophia herself was kind of surprised at the Oz's story. and I do feel like she's by the end a bit more empathetic than Oz, but still not necessarily a good person. The big reason as to why this all worked and why people are praising this show is the performances of the actors. Colin Farrell as Oz is just incredible. I mean, I know it took hours and hours of makeup, and I know that it's probably miserable to be in the makeup, like the fat suit, and with all the crap on his face to look like Penguin. But it's also a thing where, as a fan, I selfishly want him to play this character forever because he did such a good job. You know, he changed his cadence, changed his accent, the way he speaks. You really cannot tell it's Colin Farrell unless you look at Colin Farrell's eyes and they match up to Penguin. They hid him inside of that costume. Again, selfishly, I would love for him to play that role forever, but I do understand that, you know, the makeup part is hard. And also Kristen Melody as Sophia. I said this before and I'm going to say it again. She's going to blow up from this show. She's going to be in a lot more shows after this show comes out because her acting chops were totally phenomenal. Prior to being on Penguin, she was on How I Met Your Mother and a kind of, you know, had a bit of a career. I'm not saying she didn't have a career. She certainly did. Mostly on television, and she was in The Sopranos herself. But this show, I think, will eventually transition to her doing more theatrical movies. She's done a few, don't get me wrong, but they haven't really been like massive hits. I can totally see her after this joining something like the MCU or maybe even the new DC universe that James Gunn is doing, even though this is an Elseworlds GT Dragon Ball DC universe. She, because of her acting skills, she could still play other characters. She did a great job. I also want to praise Renzi. I always mess up this guy's name. Renzi Feliz as Victor, the most sympathetic character in the show. In many ways, Victor is the heart of the show. He's the guy you're rooting for. He's the guy you want to be okay, even if it means a life of crime. Because what they established early on, how he lost his family, he was a victim to something that was not his fault, and he didn't deserve it. And by the end of this whole thing, what happens with him and Penguin and their relationship, it just makes you hate Penguin. Like, it really does. It gives you an emotional reaction to say, I really hope Batman takes this guy out. You know what I mean? Clancy Brown, Sal Maroni. I was surprised what happened to him in episode 9. Or maybe it was episode 8. But Clancy Brown always delivers a great performance. And I want to put some love on Deirdre O'Connell playing Oz's mom, Frances, another complex character who's got some lots of illnesses, and she's also somebody who recognizes Oswald's, you know, the dark side of him, and recognizes that he is probably sociopathic in many ways, but she's not too far off. She's kind of a user as well, and it sort of teaches us the lesson that sometimes our parents shape how we end up, for better or for worse. I was very surprised that they kept Batman out of the story, but I also feel like that may have been for the best because this whole show is basically infighting from multiple different crime organizations and crime families in Gotham. And it's sort of like a situation where you have a mix of people all trying to get to the top. Batman is going to have to end up facing whoever does end up at the top. And part of me thought that maybe Batman would get involved now. But it's almost like this show was building up sort of how the events are going to play out in the second Batman film. Now, as of right now, they have not announced the second season, but I do know that Matt Reeves has said he wants more like side stories from other characters in his Batman universe, in his, you know, Gotham universe. I'd be fine with that. And they have plenty of people who are talented, but I think Lauren LaFranc, who is the showrunner and lead writer, should probably end up being Matt Reeves' like partner with all this, because if Lauren LaFranc can deliver a show like this with other characters, that's who I would get. Like if I were Matt Reeves, that would be my sidekick. We would talk and discuss how we're going to have these characters play out, and then let Lauren go in there and find the writing team and put it together. You know what I mean? I would love a second season, even though obviously the Penguin won, there's still unresolved issues there, and there's other characters in the Bat universe they could bring in. I would love a second season actually before the next Batman film, but that's probably doubtful. The second Batman movie's coming out, I think, October 2026, which feels like forever right now. It's 2 years away, but at the same time, time flies, so I'm sure it'll be here. I just feel like this show was a big thumbs up. I know that it did very well in the viewership the first week and started to climb little by little. I do hope that we see more, because the what made this show a success was the writing and the characters. It doesn't have that many like action sequences, has a little bit of the detective stuff, but it's a crime drama featuring a lot of bad people. You know, outside of Victor, the people in this show are very damaged individuals, and you're seeing things play out, and you're seeing decisions being made by these damaged individuals and how it affects them and the citizens of Gotham. Phenomenal show, man. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. 8 episodes on HBO Max. The episodes are a little bit under an hour, except for the final episode. So, yeah, thumbs up show. I have very little more to say about it. The performances, the characters, which is a mix of good writing and great performances, like great, acting, and then where the story goes, make it a big success to me. Watch it, damn it. Anyways, leave comments about your thoughts on the Penguin Season 1. If you're new, subscribe. Welcome to World of Geekdom. For now, take care of yourself and each other. I'll see you later this week for Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2. Hell yeah.